Hi, my name is Emily Turpak, and I am a real estate agent in the greater Philadelphia area. So that means I cover all of Philadelphia County as well as the surrounding suburbs in Pennsylvania and South Jersey. Okay, in this video, we're going to be talking about listing your home off market first and why it has so many advantages. Now, listing your property off market is a big button topic right now in real estate. So a lot of people are super divided on it. Now, I work for a company called Compass and we've been pushing off market for years. So we're kind of well known for it at this point, and we have a strategy in place that really helps sellers showcase their off market properties, which I'm going to get into. But there are some agents at other brokerages, okay, which is totally fine. They don't love the idea of off market, but understandable because their brokerage cannot offer it like we can at Compass. They can't compete with it. So then, therefore, they're not going to offer that up as an option to their clients because it's probably not going to bode well for their listing. But at Compass, we have things in place to make it a great idea for sellers. And again, I'm going to get into that now. So, basically, one of the issues that people have with listing their house off market is the exposure, right? If it's off market, you're theoretically not getting your property in front of as many people as you would if you brought it to the market. Is that true? Yes. 100% yes. But Compass recently teamed up with Redfin for a 3-year contract. And let me tell you, it's been game changing for my off market properties. I already was doing well and having success with selling my properties off market, but the Redfin partnership just took it to another level, truly. So typically, when you list off market, only agents within your brokerage can see it. So let's say I'm working with 300 other agents in my office. Only 300 agents can see that listing, right? However, with the partnership of Redfin, okay, now at Compass, we have the option to elect if we want our off market listing also on Redfin's website. So Redfin's like the third largest real estate database website. So that's, I mean, it gets like tens of millions of viewers every single month on their site. So before, you kind of just, again, your listing was just within our brokerage, which was still solid because we're the largest brokerage in Philadelphia by sales volume. So we have a lot of big players in my office. So I would still sell listings off market the traditional way. But now with Redfin, it's a no brainer to do this. So not only do all Compass agents and their clients get to see this listing before anyone else, but anyone who's looking on redfin.com, which is almost everyone. They actually have like a pretty decent website. I will give them that. And so your off market listing literally has national reach. National reach. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to find it on Zillow, but there are a lot of people who search on Redfin. Again, it's the third largest real estate website. So the exposure you're getting is way more than it ever has been before. So one of the advantages to listing your house off market is that you get to publicly advertise your property without the days on market accumulating. I want to explain days on market really quickly. So if you're looking on Zillow and you see that something's been on the market for 76 days, as a buyer, does that tell you that you probably have more leverage and that you can get the house for a better price? Absolutely. Now, if the property's been on the market for 4 days, that tells you that you don't have as much leverage and you should probably get in there quickly because it could go fast, right? So, days on market can be detrimental to your listing the longer they start accumulating, right? So the advantage to off market is that you don't have days on market. When you click on an off market listing on Redfin or on Compass's website, there's no days on market listed. They have no idea whether you put that live 90 days ago or 9 days ago. Zero clue. That's to your seller's advantage. There's no countdown. There's no number for the buyer to look at and say, "Hey, can I get a good deal on this or not?" They're none the wiser. That's to, again, the seller's advantage. And on Redfin, no days on market are listed as well, and no price reductions. let's say you initially list on Redfin off market at $450,000 and you aren't getting the traction, maybe you want to drop it to 425. That's totally fine. No one's going to know that you dropped it to 425 unless they're tracking your specific listing. It's not going to say 450 minus 25 new price 425. Buyers will not know. They will just see the 425 price. That's huge for your sellers because as a buyer, think about it. If you see a property that has just had a price reduction, that tells you, oh, no one was interested in this property at this higher price. So they had to reduce it. People don't reduce prices on houses that are going quickly and have a lot of interest. So it tells the buyer without telling the buyer, that phrase, um, you know, tell me something without telling me something. When you see the days on market accumulate or you see a price reduction, that tells the buyer everything they need to know. That's literally defines whether or not they have leverage. Now, let's say you end up, you list your house off market and you end up bringing it to the market. Okay. Still, the advantage of listing off market is that you got the word out ahead of time. So you're already getting traction before it even goes active. So you're already getting, agents interested in the property, you're getting the public interested in the property, you're bubbling your listing up. So it's just kind of giving you more of a runway so that when you do go live on the market, if you have to, you are guns a-blazing. Everyone knows about your property and it doesn't take a day or two for people to see it. People have already been seeing it and have been talking about it. Now let's talk about the FOMO that off-market properties create. Buyers want what no one else has or that fewer people have access to. There's kind of this cachet to say, hey, I got this property off market or I saw it off market. Not everyone knows about it. Now, a lot of people know about it because it's on Redfin, but not everyone, right? There's still some sort of secrecy to it. And buyers kind of like that. And when I've shown buyers properties off market, the first question they have is when are they going to bring it to the market? I don't want them to go to the market. I want it right now. What do I have to do to get it? That's what buyers are doing. They don't want you to bring it to the market. They want it for themselves. And the question again to their agent is going to be, how do I get that property? And that's exactly what you want. You want that draw. You want that itch of I have to have this property and I don't want anyone else to have it because no one else knows about it and I don't want anyone to know about it because it's my property. That's what you want. That's going to drive the demand and the price up. And it just makes buyers feel like they're in the know. That's cool. Knowing about a restaurant before it opens or, when an art gallery is doing a pop-up, people want to know about things before anyone else. It's just the nature of our world. Another thing you can do while you're listing your property off market is test pricing. Sometimes I'm working with sellers and we're not sure if we should list it at, 470, should we list it at 490, should we list it at 500? You know what? While you're off market, list it at $500,000. Who cares? Worst case, you don't get it and you bring it to the market at a more competitive price. Best case scenario, you get the $500,000 and you're thrilled. And again, if you don't get the $500,000, you just bring it to the market and no one needs to know that you ever tested the pricing at $500,000. It's off market. There's no documentation of it once you take it off market and go live to the market. Your off market listing is gone. Poof, disappeared. You can't find it again. So there's no evidence. Buyers can't see that you originally listed at $500,000 and that you had it listed there for 30 days and no bites. They don't know about it. All they can see is that you listed it live for $475,000. It's going to be a new listing to them. They might not have seen it off market. That's okay. So you get to test pricing and you can get feedback. Once you have some off market showings, you might get confirmed feedback that, hey, my clients liked the property, but $500,000 was too high. Okay, great. That's great feedback. Now we know for sure that we should go live off market at 475. 500 was too high for the public. No problem. But you learned that information while you listed it off market. In general, I always say that when you're listing your house off market as a seller, this is the time to get everything you want. This is the time where you can be super particular. Okay. Like, let's say you need a very specific closing date. You can be specific. Whereas once you go to the market, yeah, you can ask for it, but you might not get it. So you might have to be flexible. But when it's off market, you call the shots as the seller. Whereas once it's on market, almost the buyer calls the shots. The buyers will dictate whether there's demand for your property or no demand for your property and how much leverage you have as a seller. So, but when it's off market, you automatically have the leverage as a seller. So, again, this is the time to get everything you want. This is the time to get the price you want, the terms you want, the date you want, everything. And if you don't get it, just bring it to the market. It's not the be all and end all to sell it off market. And what I always remind sellers is that selling off market isn't necessarily the goal because there's really just no harm and no foul to listing it off market and then not selling it off market. Because again, that listing will disappear once you go live to the market. So it's as if it never happened. So again, if you list off market and get everything you want, great. And if you don't, just go to the market. You have a whole other option. It's not off market or bust. It's off market. And if it doesn't work, go live to the market. There's a second option here for you. Personally, I think the biggest advantage to listing your house off market is the constructive feedback that can come from private showings. So, when people do a private showing, typically you'll get feedback from their agent on whether the client liked it, what they thought of the price, etc. What's nice about getting this feedback while you're off market is that you can make tweaks so that if you do have to go to the market, you're going stronger than ever because you made adjustments to make your listing stand out and be the best it can possibly be once it goes live to the market. I'll give you an example. Let's say you get feedback that your house is very cluttered, the furniture is too big for the space, and the buyer had a hard time visualizing their stuff in there. No problem. Let's rent a storage unit for 2 months, pare back everything in your house, clean out the closets, make sure that the buyer can feel like their stuff can fit in here and they can envision themselves, and also that there's just more storage. Maybe there's really tight storage in your house. That's probably one of the reasons why you're moving. Let's show how much storage there is by emptying the closets and making them appear bigger instead of like chock a block full of clothes and bins, etc. Instead of someone opening up the door and saying, "Oh wow, they're really running out of space here. They're packed to the gills." They'll open up a closet now and say, "Oh, there's all the storage here. Yeah, there's a ton of storage in this house." That's the difference. And so, but you might have gotten that feedback while you're off market. So again, once you go to the market, you're locked and ready to go because you followed someone's constructive feedback and you were able to showcase your listing in the best possible way after making these small changes. Another thing I like to tell sellers when they're listing on market is that their house has to be available at a moment's notice. Okay. You really don't want to decline a showing when you're on market because that could be your buyer. So it could be a last minute showing request. It could be a late evening showing request. It could be an early morning showing request. You really want to accommodate when your house is on market because again, those days on market are accumulating. So if a buyer wants to see it at 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday, you don't want to push them off until Saturday over the weekend when it's technically more convenient for you. However, when a house is off market, the seller calls the shots. So the seller can be like, "Nope, sorry, I can't do 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Tell me your next available and I'll see if I can make it work." But you don't have to bend over backwards because it's off market. Again, you're in charge, you're in control as the seller. You can also do open houses while you're off market. I just had a listing in Fishtown. We had 17 groups through that open house while it was off market, just because of it being advertised on Redfin and its proximity to Frankfurt Ave in Fishtown. We just got so much traction. So you can totally have an off market open house as well to get more buyers. I will also say that the buyers who are seeing your house while it's off market are serious. I can't even begin to tell you. I don't know, maybe it's 50% of buyers. I don't know. I'd have to like really, really think about this. They have no intention of buying your house when they see it. And I know that sounds crazy, but maybe even think of you if you have bought a house before. you know, maybe you're new to South Philly and you just want to see a few houses to see what you think of the area. You're not going to buy those houses. It's your first time in South Philly. But if it's off market, you're probably not going to book a showing. You're going to book it if it's on market because it's on market, they expect showings, fine. We'll just go see it for fun. I can't tell you how many times I've shown properties to buyers who I know for a fact are not going to buy that property. That happens way more often than you think. You kind of reduce that or almost eliminate that when you list it off market. You're only going to get serious, qualified people coming through your house and people who are truly teamed up with an agent. That means that they're not reaching out to someone on Zillow and saying, hey, connect with an agent. These are serious people who are locked in with their agent who are actively looking. And that's really nice too, because when you're a seller, your house has to be available. And it's inconvenient. Let's be honest. You have to make sure that there are no dishes in the sink. You have to make sure everything's vacuumed. You have to make sure that the dogs are out of the house. You have to rearrange your Zoom call to make sure that you can, leave the property during, the showing. It's a lot of coordination to have a showing. And wouldn't it be nice that every time you have to do that, you know for a fact that that buyer is a real, true, serious buyer? So, as I said, there are so many advantages to listing your house off market. Now, it's not going to be for everyone. I would say it's actually probably more of a timing thing than anything else, to be honest with you, because let's say it's the first of the month and you want to list by the fourth and you still need to do photos and everything like that. Okay, yeah, just go live to the market at that point. You don't have a lot of time. But if you're not going to list for a week or, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, absolutely list it off market. Why not? I even have a listing right now that's going to go live next week, but this weekend is a holiday weekend. So I would never list a property on the market leading up to a major holiday weekend. So we knew we didn't want to go live this weekend. We knew we wanted to wait until next week, but that's a whole week. I have photos already. So we might as well list it off market for a week, see if we can get some traction, maybe test some pricing, maybe get some feedback from a showing or two. And again, if it doesn't work out, no problem. We go live to the market, but we have this whole week where it's not going to be listed. So we might as well list it off market. Anyway, it's definitely worth discussing with your agent and seeing if it's the right option. And I'm happy to chat about that with you.